You're listening to Chameleon Church, biblical antidotes for the modern man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
Oh, hello. Good morning. Good morning. I'm your host, Allan Aguirre. You are watching the Chameleon Church Show. Don't ask me what this accent is, because I'm really bad at accents. I really suck at accents. Hey, guess what time it is? Besides, the Chameleon Church Show. It's February 1st. It's mine and Alyssa's birthday month. That's right. Line them up, man. Amazon the heck out of us. It's our birthday month. There's actually those of you, well, I don't know if you're actually one of them, but there's people in the Torah community that don't do the birthday thing. They don't even say happy birthday. They've decided it's, if you can find something goofy, you can find something goofy about anything and everything if you look hard enough. You could find something goofy about this show. You could find something goofy about me. You could find something goofy about the internet. You could find something goofy about your car. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Why do you think the Amish don't ride cars? Why do you think they don't use electricity? Why do you think they dress the way they do? Why do you think cult people dress the way they do? Fundamental Mormons, they're just going back to the roots of their faith, polygamy and stuff. The Mennonites, the Anabaptists. I mean, you can find something goofy in anything. Heck, Messianics wearing their linen and their gold encrusted, fake, imitation gold encrusted shofars and doing their little wavy things. I mean, that's what we, as humans, that's what we do. It comes from a need, a longing, a desire for community. So if a whole bunch of us can dress like a bunch of goofballs, then we feel like we belong. There's this great line in Spanish that says, un tonto vestido por niños seguido por niños vestidos de tonto. And that's how you describe a Cub Scout leader. A dummy dressed up like a kid being followed by kids dressed up like dummies. I don't know why I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but community. That's why there's music scenes and sports stuff, right? People gather around football. They gather around a particular artist. They're gathering around Neil Young. Neil Young has rights. He has the right to pull his music from Spotify. I'm sorry, Sunshine. That's not even the subject. You just changed the narrative. No one has said Neil Young doesn't have rights. It's Neil Young that's trying to keep somebody else from having the right. You muppet, get the narrative straight. I'm actually seeing those type of posts. There's this great Yahoo clickbait article about it. Neil Young rallies other artists. And then if you read the article, there's one artist that's rallied with him and no one knows who he is. Never heard of him. He's a guitarist for some band that has just pulled a whole bunch of, it's like, no, you've got the narrative wrong. But see, liberals always get the narrative wrong. They change the narrative because, well, I think they know they look like a bunch of assholes. I think they know they look like a bunch of dummies, and so that's why they change the narrative, right? No one's saying that Neil Young doesn't have any rights. No one said that at all. Well, okay, Joni Mitchell, woohoo. No one said that at all. He's the one that's imposing his snowflakeness into the equation and suggesting that Joe Rogan doesn't have the right to be heard. We can't even talk about it because where I was about to go would get us in trouble. Let's do that somewhere else. Yeah. I tell you, I don't need your help. I can trigger myself. I have never had any grace for human stupidity, ignorance. If you're crass, man, just stay at home. I don't want to. I don't get near me. I can't stand it. I literally cannot stand it, and that's where I'm trying to learn how to be like Jesus, the humble servant. Okay, so I brought this up the other day with my wife. Jesus, the humble servant. You know, it never says that anywhere in the Bible. She says you're just making that up. It's not even biblical. I think it's a Catholic thing. But my idea was Jesus, the humble servant can mean anything. And the way I'm looking at, right? So help me out here. Has anybody else heard of this Jesus, the humble servant? I think it's a Catholic thing, but Jesus as a humble servant, no matter how correct he was and how incorrect you were, he still loved you and served you unto death. I'd like to try. I'd like to be that guy. But anyway, Jesus, the humble servant. Yeah, if you want to trigger her, bring that up. It's pretty funny. And a lot of Muppetry going on out there. Lots of Muppetry going on out there. What kind of Muppetry can we find ourselves in this week? Well, all right. Before I say anything else, hey!
Speaking of Muppetry.
What's
Good
that?
morning.
Speaking of Muppetry.
Oh my gosh. Good morning.
We can come up with some pretty goofy stuff if you want us to.
Oh, man.
Yeah, humble servant. I thought of that's I guess direct is the humbled himself to the point, on the cross,
Right.
Philippians.
Yeah, that's where that would come from.
Yeah.
His designation was a suffering servant.
Ah.
And that's a lot different because it has to do with death for sin,
Yeah.
which was the description of the Messiah. But also, he's coming back. That lamb that was slaughtered from eternity past is coming back as a lion with teeth.
Right. That's interesting, isn't it? So, what's up? What's up, guys?
Good to see you, man.
Yeah.
You're good at just like entertaining us.
Yeah, it was great.
My aunt suggested one time that I could do Conan O'Brien's job. I'm like, well, I'm not a comedian. She's like, no, you could do that. You could talk to other entertainers. You could entertain entertainers, and you could do that whole thing. And I'm like, I think she's right, and I think I've learned how to do that. I didn't know I could do that before, but it's it's a trip. It's different without having a microphone and a band behind you, but it's essentially the same thing, right? No, kinda, maybe.
Yeah.
Can I tell a behind the scenes story?
Oh, absolutely. I'd like to hear it.
Okay, which one? No. I when I met you in Dallas, and when I met you, you were. I won't go into the details of how we met, but when the night I met you, you said come by the studio, and you were doing a studio for some Christian rap. You were doing a demo or something for some Christian rap band. Do you remember that?
No.
And you're like, "Hey, I'm working. Then we'll take a smoke break." And so you're on a smoke break with these rap guys outside the studio, and we're just. It was. I felt like we were instantly buds.
You thought you were instantly. Oh, that we were instantly
Yeah,
buds.
we instantly connected. I mean,
Gotcha.
you were definitely you tend to draw a lot of wackos, so you were definitely screening me.
You got to do that, man.
Yeah. But the first time I was in the studio, you were Josh was cutting vocals with you, and we're on this side of the glass, and you're in the ISO booth, and you remember there was that pole. There's the pole in the middle of the ISO booth for the ceiling, and you just weren't feeling it. You were singing, and you just weren't feeling it. And you're like, "Hey, get in here." and you had us sit like the two. I think it was me and River maybe. So we're sitting on the floor in the vocal booth because you needed someone to perform to.
Oh yeah. It's true.
And then it's like nailed it. So you were doing, it was like a one-on-one show. You're doing all your moves. He's doing his moves like he's like the first time I saw him on stage. Like, oh my gosh, like this private performance. And then it was, I forget which track it was, but it was the one where you had the chord. You're holding the chord, like doing your moves, but you were tapping the pole, like in this break. Which we actually kept on the track and then reverbed it out in the track. But it was a very fun memory. I was like, oh, this is next level. This is and of course in the days before iPhones,
right.
It would be like live feed Instagram, Allan Aguirre.
I used to have to like literally have like a little audience in the room a lot of times in order to get that performance.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I started doing this live streaming stuff, I'm like, how in the hell am I going to sit here and just talk to a camera? How am I going to do that? There's nobody around. And then I had to just like, okay, there's somebody on the other side of that camera and I'm talking to them, you know? Like, that's when I started making up my romper room joke. Oh, I see little Billy and I see little Susie. Cause oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, performers, it's mental, you know. You gotta do whatever it takes to get the take or, you know. Anyway
is right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Lenny doesn't have any memories about me.
No, they were all great memories.
Whatever. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
Don't lie, dude. Don't lie.
Hey, I remember walking into that humble little place you used to live in, and when we first really made contact and see you with your wife and your little babies.
We lived in the Tamataluca.
Toluca Lake.
Tamataluca and Toluca Lake. Yeah.
Bob Hope's little lair.
Yeah, everybody used to do. Dudley Moore would drive by the house every Thursday.
Yeah. And you were hungry, man.
Yeah, well, we were desperate to repent.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Lenny, what did you talk about in your teachings this week? Are you still in Matthew 24-ish? Like, what's going on?
I just transitioned over to Mark in my devotion, and the interesting thing is I'm finishing up Esther also, and at the end of Genesis, right before. Where Jacob he just had his meeting with Esau on the way, giving him all his flocks and stuff. So it's an interesting time because this next portion, Teruma, that I think we're coming into, if that's the right one, it has all to do with the menorah, the tabernacle and everything. But it also has to deal with the whole issue of Moses. And last night, Allan on the was talking about just God's sovereignty, how he orchestrates things. Some of the things that I got out of it, the things that you think are going to really destroy you, God uses. And I was thinking about with Moses, the very person that wanted to murder him ends up providing the finances to take care of him. And the one who wanted to murder him, his daughter is the one that rescued him. So when God puts his things in place, they're unmovable, and he orchestrates even in the midst of that. So then this morning I was just reading in the parable of the sower and the tares and the wheat. The reality is I looked at it a whole different line of thinking, because when you see it start out and when he talks about it, he's talking about that parable really has to reflect on what the enemy is all about to do to us, the spiritual warfare behind it, the reason why Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil. That's why he came. Sure, there's some other things that you can throw in there, but that primarily states why he is coming, to restore creation. Yeah, we're we're the benefit along the way, but he used us in a special way where the enemy wanted to take us out. That's why it says the angels don't even know what our designation is. They don't even have, I don't know if we even know it. All we know is that we have the kingdom. He says, I'm giving you these keys of the kingdom. And it has to do with warfare. It has to do with destroying things around us. It has to do all with vanquishing the enemy through his love and his sacrifice. And yet for the knowledge that, hold on here, he's coming back to run ripshod. And just some things that started coming into me about the wheats and the tares. And I looked at Moses and I mean, he was supposed to be murdered. God used the very murderers to continue the kingdom of God in that whole narrative. So just some things for me to think on that are deep for me just to ponder about. Okay, he's in charge. Yeah. And nothing's going to thwart us.
And just in case you ever wonder what Torah portion you're supposed to be at, there's this calendar we have.
Yes.
And, it tells you what week we're on, the date, and then right there, the Torah portion for the week. And yes, this week we are on Terumah. It means heave offering. And that's where we're at. And just thought I'd, just helping you out there.
It's a great calendar. I use it every day.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. It's pretty rad. We're almost done. So this is our one. This is our second one. Our third one just began, and I'm using the second one because it goes through into Passover. So it ends in March, and then the next one, began in January and it goes through April. But I was last night was the new moon conjunction, and it's the right. So we have to, it's time for us to look for and then we tell you that as well. So if you're in the calendar, then on the other side, is the projected dates for the week, and it says up here, new moon. Look for the new moon. So so not only do you know what the reading plan is when it comes to the Torah portion, but it also prepares you that, hey, the new moon is going to happen this week, so you can be you're alerted to it. And these are little things that we're working on for the app too. I would like to get an alert on your phone. New moon tonight, all right? Oh man, it's going to be rad. Anyway, so this, our calendar is like the first to market. Most Messianic ministries have wall calendars, right? They don't have like actual day planners. And I don't know, either way, even if there is another app out there, ours is going to be more comprehensive because we're already doing a more comprehensive thing. It's a lot of fun to be first, Anyway, so last night was the conjunction. So either, tonight or the next day or so, everyone should be looking out for the visible crescent in your area. And then of course we keep our eyes out, not only Jerusalem, but also around the country as well. I might not see it if it's tonight because I'm maybe cloud cover, but you might be in Dallas and you might see it. And then we let everybody know. And that's also another feature I shouldn't probably tell you what all our feature sets are going to be until we do it. It's actually being worked on. But anyway, so the new moon will be here in the next, within the next 48 hours. Will be the 12th month. And so as I was looking at that, I was like, oh my gosh, next month would be Passover. I'm like, oh my God, how is that possible? And then I realized, no, we're in a leap year. So next month will be the 13th month. And then, and that's also in the calendar. So it's pretty exciting stuff. Hey, we'll be right back. that's the intro to Grandmother's Spaceship. You're muted, Kris.
It's an upgrade in your adverts. I like it.
Thanks. So in 1998, I put out a record called Grandmother's Spaceship. And a lot of the lyrical content on that album was about a lot of stuff like this. And it came out like just years, way ahead of its time, apparently, the subject matters and stuff. And that was the first track of the album. That's the intro to the album. And it's like, I think it's a relevant piece, and it works really good. You know, the intro, the piece of music, it's like a minute long right before we start our Monday night devotional. That's our Spyglass Blues old intro music. We would play that before we'd hit the stage. I think that was after you, Kris. Yeah, you know, I've got stuff just sitting around that I can use, and I don't have to pay for it. I have to worry about royalty, and you know.
That's so good.
That starts tonight, right?
Yeah. That doesn't sound like it's from 1998, does it?
No.
Well, that's not what I thought, but yeah, it has the, you know, the drums, the drum machine thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely dated, but
Hey, you don't what?
It's dated in a good way.
He just said it was dated. Yeah,
it's dated. It's dated, just like Neil Young.
He's calling you an old man, Allan.
Yeah, 19. Wait, you were alive in 1998?
I had lunch with a friend of mine yesterday, and we're sitting there, and he's like, "Yeah, my birthday's coming up." And I was like, "When were you born?" He says, "1990." And I just went,
"Right?
Wow, dude. And you're still my friend?"
1990. I was in and out of how many things by then?
Yeah.
That's a long time. Well, that's 32 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sin Disease came out in 1990.
Hey, I have a question. Can you guys school me on the on the Urim and Thummim? The
We don't know.
It's just something I don't understand. Yeah. I'm just like, what is this?
We're not quite sure. I mean, Joseph Smith thought he knew what they were, and he says that he had them, and he was using them to decipher the cuneiform that he was, which was, you know, the cuneiform that Joseph Smith was translating was actually the Egyptian Book of the Dead, apparently. And it's just, I mean, not that he had an actual piece of cuneiform that was the actual Egyptian Book of the Dead, but he was referencing the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Go ahead, Lenny. While I go get some coffee.
There's nothing in antiquities that even comes close. It's all conjecture and opinion. All conjecture and opinion. And you'd think that there would be some explanation even from their teachers back then, but that's one of those mysterious kingdom heavenly things that we just don't know. And yet it was a tangible, material artifact that communicated directly with the Spirit of God and had power on it. So go figure. I mean, it's the things of what we look at science fiction today, but it was real, and it was we don't know what happened to them. It had to be still around, but it doesn't even say what happened to them, what happened to those priestly devices back then. Just like with the Ark of the Covenant when it was here, a lot of the depiction of what we saw in Hollywood is not too far off, and the power that it attained. But the regular Levites, they had these things, and whether one of them had it or if there was more, we just don't know.
It's fascinating why if you believe that Scripture is the Word of God, which we do, it's like, what's his intent? Why is it there? Why is he? It's just so interesting. And maybe it's just one of those mysteries that will be revealed when we see him as he is. And I'm just fascinated by it. I've wondered sometimes if it's like a, icons get a bad rap because of the Catholic Church and stuff. But like, if it was a thing that was a tangible thing to have priests, it was a way for them to physically connect with an object that trained their mind to engage the Holy Spirit or something.
It could have been. Remember, it was only around a short time. It wasn't part of the most of the narrative of the Old Testament. It was there a short time. And even that, they're not able to date. They can come close, but just the few times it was mentioned.
Are we still talking about the same thing?
Yeah.
Pardon me? I have a feeling, just a sense, and just my opinion, in that when Israel was first being formed and they went to Sinai and they were just about his presence going back and forth. Remember those, 70 of them went onto the mount and had dinner, had a meal with the living God. Can you wrap your head around that?
With his
and
foot.
Here these same guys rebelled. Think about what the technology of heaven that had to be put in place to orchestrate 600,000 people. And we're clueless when it comes to the technology of heaven. Yet what we're seeing come on the scenes today with this whole alien thing and just the postulation that, you know what, it's either revealing of certain heavenly beings, whether you want to call them watchers or not. Just like you call people the watchers that we know of, not all of them were evil. Are there still created beings in heaven? Yeah, we just don't know. And it's like, I know Allan's going to be teaching on this. The nations, when he gave the nations to those principalities that are governing them, just because we identified the word principality, does that mean it's all evil? Just like when we say, are all Pharisees evil? But when you think of the Christianese behind Phariseeism, I don't want to be a Pharisee. Well, not all of them were evil.
Yeah.
And remember, there's sheep nations and goat nations. So it's interesting. Some of those principalities and powers that are over the nations today, they're not necessarily all evil. And that's why when people strut around saying, I have the power over all principalities, they're idiots. Sorry. But those are the kind of things. Remember when Michael even said to Nahash, he goes, you know what? I'm just going to tell you the Lord rebuke you, because he did not want to bring a railing accusation against powerful beings. And he was a powerful being. There's just a lot of stuff where
there's a lot of stuff Christianity has been there's a whole bunch of stuff out of the biblical narrative that Christianity has not been taught because of the mysticism, because of its mystic and spiritual nature. And so, Christianity is really afraid of that stuff. Because, well, again, if I don't know how to play guitar, I can't teach you how to play guitar. And so I don't know if you've ever heard my acoustic guitar analogy when it comes to spiritual gifts and apostles and prophets. It's a good one. I'll have to find it. We'll have to re-air it somewhere. But if you don't know about the spiritual realm, right? For example, if your pastor can't heal the sick, cast out demons, doesn't speak in tongues, isn't prophetic, doesn't function in the prophetic, he can't teach you. So they have to stay out of those conversations because it'll just make them look bad. Because it's above their pay grade. So when the supernatural, when the spiritual, when the mystic, cosmic nature of God is above your pay grade, you're going to demonize it. You're going to make it bad. You're going to, right? That's why they didn't canonize Enoch. It took them over 10 years. And we're talking the Catholics again, because they're the ones. The Catholic Church did all this.
Yes.
So it's history. It's not a bias. It's historical. If it was Joe's church, I'd be saying Joe's church. Okay. It wasn't. It was the Catholic Church. So anyway, they're the ones that, that made all this. It took them over 10 years to canonize Revelation because it was too mystic, too cosmic. too much stuff going on. You know what I mean? So that's why they don't have Enoch in there. But anyway, so there are things in the biblical narrative they just have to completely ignore and not teach us or not tell us. And it's literally burying it under the carpet, not hiding it or sweeping it, but burying it under the carpet. For example, we see in the Old Testament a lot. There's God, His servants, the prophets, are using oracles. They're using things as oracles. They're using staffs. Moses' staff was being used as an oracle. Throw it on the ground, turns into a snake, right? They were using staffs as oracles. Musicians. Elijah uses a harpist as an oracle to get a message from God. We see this all the time. We see it. Constantly see it. Look at just the my mind just went blank. David had one, and he's not allowed to have one because he's not a Levite. The breastplate, the ephod, How do you know what they say about the ephod? Right. So it has the ephod is the piece that they wear, the priests, the Levites wear on their chest.
The 12 tribes of Israel, right?
And it has the 12 different gems or the 12 different stones they're all different colors, and they each represent one of the tribes. So there's 12 of them in rows of 3, right? Or is it 4 and 3, 3 and 4? Anyway, there's 12. I think it's 3. And it is suggested, and it has been suggested for a very, very, very long time, when the high priest would be in the Holy of Holies interceding for the people, that they would pretty much come alive, these stones. And think of Close Encounters. Do, 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 do. Right? I mean, they would come alive. And they, man, you can't tell people that. Well, you can, but you can't tell Christians that. Christians have been taught to fear astronomy. Christians have been taught, don't look at the sky. Whereas my Bible says, look at the sky, because that's where you're going to get your answers, and that's where you're going to get your messages.
He told Abraham, look at the heavens.
And he says in Genesis, I put stars and stuff in the skies as signs for you. That's why they don't know. That's why they're the most ignorant of. If we're looking at a 7,000-year history of people of faith, Christianity, starting around the 2nd or 3rd century, is the most ignorant of them all. And we're the ones here at the end game.
Listen, look at this, Allan. Wokeness started about 150 years after Jesus was crucified.
Yeah.
The enemy, the Nephilim, the devils really started pounding that. They transferred the spiritual understanding of what the Holy Spirit was doing. I mean, all the apostles, they understood when Jesus was talking about Nephilim and the devils. There was nobody back then who didn't know that. About 150 years later, the church got hacked because they tried to transfer the power of what spiritual things are to man, so that man sitting on the throne in Rome would have all the power. And from there, it just disseminated. You want to know where wokeness started? It's not just new in our generation. That's when the real woke people started saying, yeah, but you better look at this. This is not acceptable.
Yeah.
That's where we got hacked.
Yeah, the 2nd or 3rd century, they eliminated, here's what they did. They eliminated the Torah. They eliminated Leviticus 23. That alone is going to hurt you. And then they eliminated the Holy Spirit. And along with that, all the gifts and the fivefold ministry. Why do you think the earth plummets into what is widely known as the Dark Ages as soon as these people got control? Well, because they eliminated every essence of God, every characteristic of God, the Holy Spirit and the Torah.
So what's revival then? Was it just the salvation of souls, or was it the inbreaking of his presence again to bring back the truth of why he's here? And then you can really see where the real authentic revivals really happen. Everybody's
Right.
going, I want revival. But what they're saying is,
Right.
no, we want to fill up our churches again and have a Holy Ghost party. That's not revival.
But here's what's interesting. As much as these guys, right, the Romans, right, the Italians, that's who it is.
Yeah.
The Roman Catholic Church. There's your first clue. There's something's gone wrong.
Yep.
Rome is the center of the church. Anyway, here's what's very interesting. Just like a liberal does today, so they demonize all this stuff, but then they utilize all this stuff in their forms of worship. They're utilizing all this same apparatus, stuff from Egypt, iconography from Egypt and Phoenicia, you know what I'm saying? Even though they demonize all of that and they tell the people this is all bad, then they turn around and they utilize it and they make it a part of the worship. It's just like a liberal would. They talk from both sides of their mouth, right?
Yep.
We used the first thing we did this morning was mention how Neil Young is trying to shut down Joe Rogan, right, and his rights. But now everyone's saying, well, Neil's got rights too. Well, what are you talking about? See, it's the same thing. You can't say I have the right to shut you down. That's not my right to do that. So anyway, it's that mentality. It's two forked. It's double. What's the forked tongue mentality?
Tongue.
So yeah. So there's all this stuff that's been in play. Oracles. I mean, just look at Balaam. Balaam is a prophet for hire, and he's using fees for divination. That's how he gets paid. He gets paid by fees for divination by Canaanites, by the people we're talking about this week, right? So he lives in the land of Canaan, which is infested with Nephilim, and he's a prophet, and he's using fees for divination to prophesy and all that. It never says he's a false prophet. Never. He literally does hear from God. God in the narrative is actually talking to him. And when his donkey speaks to him, he's not surprised by it. Ever hear that? No. Right? He's not surprised by it. And there's details of how he's setting up all these altars because there's right. And it's like God's just don't curse him. And then he blesses them instead. Jehoshaphat and Ahab, 400 prophets. What the hell are they doing? I can only imagine the cockadoodle show that is, with these 400 guys doing whatever it is they're doing, the jumping around and the cutting, and who knows what they're doing. But there's weird stuff going on. I guarantee you there's weird stuff going on.
I would. That's one of my favorite stories in the Bible and testimonies. The whole scene before and after.
Nuts.
I want to see him. I want to see like
right
the best movie that's ever been done about that story.
Yeah,
that would be amazing.
You know what I've seen in the spiritual realm is the day after Korah is eaten up by the earth, right? The next day, when Israel came up against Moses and said, "Yesterday you killed God's people, and a plague begins," and they're in front of the tent of meeting. There's like the tent of meeting, God, Moses and Aaron, and the people come with an accusation. The plague breaks out. Moses falls on his face, and Aaron, it says, is literally standing between the living and the dead, making atonement for them. I've seen that, and it wasn't good, man. It wasn't pretty.
The second Exodus,
it was loud too.
The whole second Exodus is the interesting thing. It parallels exactly what went on right after Korah was eaten up, because it's not just the rescuing of the faithful, but it's the thinning out of the false ones.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to talk about, what the seals are. When Jesus undoes the seals, you're talking about a thinning out. So we're going through a cycle right now.
Virgin.
And when the Antichrist shows up, and all of a sudden signs and wonders and just radical things start to happen, and if what we call aliens, when the Nephilim are starting to be revealed, what do you think the whole world is going to wonder after? They're going to say, oh man, this is Jesus. This is the power. They're going to try to connect that. And we're going to have to say, are you kidding me? They do not know Torah. I mean, the deception that's going to come, he says, unless those days were shortened, even the elect wouldn't be saved. So that scares the heck out of me, or the hell out of me.
So if you do research, so in the book of Acts, the Gentiles, the pagans, before they're even qualified to come to Jesus, which totally destroys all Christian theology right there. One of the things that they're supposed to not be involved with is things offered unto idols. And if you dig deep and research that, it's actually talking about instruments, things used in pagan worship, and how they're not supposed to utilize those utensils or that apparatus. There's a reason why God has us doing what he has us doing as true worshipers of himself, according to Jesus and the Samaritan woman. And it's to make sure we aren't utilizing, syncretism. We're not using those things. But in the same way, there are things we do. And I mean, the covenant is made by the eating of matzah, it says. So when I eat matzah, I'm actually engaging in covenant. Yeah. What the heck? Tassels, wearing tassels. Reaching out, Jesus, the woman with the issue of blood. It's like Christianity is so afraid of the supernatural. They're so afraid of God. They're just like Israel at Mount Sinai, exactly like Israel at Mount Sinai. They're terrified of this other, outside of our world, outside of our dimensional realm, outside of our plane of they're so terrified of the other world, the supernatural, the spiritual realm. They're afraid of that other dimensional realm outside of their, right? What was I told when I healed Ian Hellerman? What was I told by his friends? You can't be surprised by how we reacted. It's not like this is like something we're we see all the time. It's like, see, they thought I was a warlock and I was functioning in the demonic because they had never seen God. Lifelong Christians will call it demonic, and they confuse the two. They don't know the difference between stick or snake, angel or demon. They've not been taught that, because you have to know that in order to teach it. And so what happens is, when the Holy Spirit does show up, they call it Kundalini, they call it demonic, because they're fear and ignorance, right? Just like the fear, doubt, and unbelief that caused Israel is the same fear, doubt, and unbelief that we talked about last night that causes the people in the synagogue of Nazareth to say no and miss Jesus. In the same way, don't look at the sky. No, that's why you don't know what's going on. It's because you won't look at the sky, or like you brought up, our articles or implements of worship that we don't know about because they're ancient. Like the ephod. See, David had an ephod because one of the guys had one. When Saul killed the priest, he killed his dad and all that, and so the kid took the ephod and it was with David. And so whenever David inquired of the Lord, he would call this young guy who was a Levite, bring the ephod. I need to inquire of the Lord. And the ephod was used as an oracle. Staffs have been used as oracles. Ephods have been used as oracles. Judaism uses candles as oracles when they do the whole Shabbat thing and they usher in the Shabbat queen. Don't do that, ladies. Don't do this and don't do this. That's just goofy with the candle lighting. That's not biblical. That's
Gideon and the fleece.
Yeah, Gideon and the fleece. The way they drink water. See, this is all throughout the biblical narrative. It's all in there, and we see it again in Revelation. See. Just because it doesn't talk about a lot of this stuff in the Gospels or in the epistles doesn't mean, right? Because that's just a blip compared to what the whole book, the whole Bible, the whole compilation of the Bible. But again, Christianity is lacking a lot of this information because, one, they don't know it, and two, they actually absolutely are terrified of the supernatural, of the spiritual realm, and so they can't address it. And that's why they came up with, Genesis 6, the sons of God, those are the Sethites. Those are the sons of Seth. And the daughters of man, those are the non-Sethites. It's like they can't, they have to change it because, to suggest otherwise is just insane. And it's just more goofiness. They're constantly making it goofy. And it's unfortunate. But they do. So, what are you going to do? Well, we do what we do. But, it's a remnant, and the majority they're going to say, no, these guys are whacked out. These guys are freaked out. They believe that. I mean, what we're going to talk about this week, is what we're going to talk about this week is going to freak, would freak normal, the majority. What do you mean the Bible talks about giants and portals and gateways and satires and unicorns and hey, look at just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it's not true. Just because you don't know about it doesn't make it not true. It's like that guy a few weeks ago at that church I visited. Well, I've never seen anybody raised from the dead, so God's not raising people from the dead. Well, who the hell are you? I actually said that. What makes you so special that if you haven't seen it, then God mustn't be working like that? The hell are you? I've never heard of you. Punch these people in the throat, I tell you, man. How insane?
You probably
what's
shouldn't
that?
do that. You probably shouldn't do that.
How insanely arrogant is that? God isn't doing this in the earth realm today because I've never seen it. I can't even think of there are expletives in my mind right now that I can't say. It's like, who are you? That's insane. And I told him that. You're insane, dude. That's absolutely. Are you talking, Lenny? Because you're muted. Lenny, you're muted. Are you talking?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know I was muted.
I muted you when you were sitting there making a bunch of noise.
Oh, really? The old man stuff? Or
No, well, the thing is, I was talking and you were interrupting me, but no one could hear you, thank God. No, go ahead.
So listen to what John said at the very end. He said, and there are also many other things that Jesus did, which, if they were written one by one, that not even the world itself could contain in books, what would be written.
And I think that's a real important point because he says it twice. It's at the end of 20 and at the end of 21, or is there 21 in John? Yeah.
Yeah. And we've lost a lot of the reality of what we need to be discipled in, because it not only brings the fear of the Lord. Let me tell you something. If this stuff doesn't bring the fear of the Lord, we're in trouble. And it's the fear of the Lord and righteousness that makes one obedient. And Christianity doesn't want that. They want you to know that everything's fine and you really don't have any responsibilities past the part of when you were saved, and that's it. And then Peter comes along and says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Yikes.
And if they don't know anything about any of this, imagine how shallow that a futile attempt is.
Yeah, I love that passage, or the thought it triggers about that passage. Not it says there's so many works that all the books in the world could not contain them, or the library, and it's just That means, like when Jesus said, when the disciples couldn't cast out the demons and they said, why couldn't we do it? He says, these ones require prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus didn't see the demon and go, oh, I'm going to go fast and pray. He was living a lifestyle that immediately let him, he was living it, just like when, like you said, when the woman touched his tassels, immediately power went out from him. He had this lifestyle of constant oneness with his Father and the Spirit. That power just emanated from him. And what's fascinating to me, and this relates to what you're saying, Allan, that's still happening.
Mm-hmm.
That means it was constantly, every day, he was doing something that was a miracle. There was no other way for him to operate,
Right.
which means he's doing a miracle right now. And he just did one again. And another one just happened. And another one just happened. And someone just got raised from the dead. He's doing works all over the world, all the time. And it blows my mind of his magnificence and his holiness. And here's the mind blower. The King of the universe invites us into that. He is saying, you will do greater works than this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such an invitation. I want it in my life. I want that oneness with the Father, that someone would want to be with me, to touch me, because they know, hey, if you just get in the earshot of Kris playing drums, you'll get healed. Like, Lord, please inhabit my gifts, inhabit my heart. I make a temple for you in my heart. Please emanate. Please have your way. I just love meditating on that and dwelling in that concept. Reality, it's not a concept.
So then, and see that, and that's the question, and that's why we're having a dialogue starting tonight. How are we supposed to navigate all this supernatural stuff that it says is coming when we don't even know it's coming? I mean, how many of us actually know this stuff is actually on its way, or already here, and already has been here, and that a lot of the stuff that they're experiencing is based on this stuff either directly or indirectly, right? Because there's a lot of, for example, there's stuff that's going on with our children in the last 20 years that wasn't happening when you and I were kids, Lenny. Because we're like 10 years apart, 8 years apart.
I'm going to be 70.
Oh, crap.
I'm a
12.
little farther.
12 plus years apart. But see what I'm saying, though? Stuff that kids in the 50s and 60s and 70s, they didn't experience stuff that 20 years later, like in the 90s, and with a lot of I'm being careful with what I say because I can't really say too much on these platforms because we're being censored in America today. A lot of the children, like what would be like our grandchildren, and even some of our kids, depending on how old our children are, we're experiencing things that we weren't experiencing when we were kids. All those 3 and 4 letter acronyms that people love to identify with, and suggesting that kids should be medicated so that they're not like that. How come that wasn't going on when I was a kid? Well, because things change. See, because there's stuff in their food, there's stuff in their. Do you guys? Okay, we'll talk about that tonight and this week. But there's stuff going on that is a cause and effect of what it is that we are talking about tonight. That wasn't happening 40, 50 years ago, are happening now. Right? Think of it, if we're being funneled, we're being pushed to through this funnel, and so it's tightening, right? And it's getting narrower and narrower as we get closer to that point. That's what's been happening. That's why our technology. Do you realize the leaps and bounds of technology in the last 30 years, just in the last 25 or 30 years, is mind-boggling? How did that happen? How come it didn't happen last Why, see, on and on and on and on and on. Well, that being the case, we are being herded, Herd, herded to a certain place, to a certain point in our time-space continuum by humans and not entirely humans that are being puppet mastered by certain, Ephesians 6. How are we even going to be able to take on Ephesians 6 if we don't understand Genesis 6, if we don't understand the stuff that we're talking about? Everybody, whether you agree with me when it comes to eating bacon, wearing tassels, keeping the biblical Sabbath, you might do Christmas, I do Hanukkah, you might do Easter, I do Passover, right? Whether you agree with me or not on those things, more than likely, more than 80% of you that disagree with me agree with me when I say the book of Revelation is prophetic and it talks about our tomorrow. Right? That's fair to say, right? Let me read you a little piece of that prophetic book that's coming up tomorrow. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now have come God's victory, power and kingship, and the authority of his Messiah. Because the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them day and night before God, has been thrown out. They defeated him because of who defeated him? With the authority of his Messiah. The brothers that he's been accusing. They defeated him because of the Lamb's blood and because of the message of their witness. See? People of faith. Even when facing death, they did not cling to life. Therefore, rejoice, heaven, and you who live there. But woe to you, land and sea." Wait, there's two different life dimensions or levels. So, they defeated him because of the Lamb's blood and because of the message of their witness. Even when facing death, they did not cling to life. Therefore, rejoice, heaven, and you who live there. But woe to you, land and sea. Now we're back on terrestrial earth. For the adversary has come down to you, and he is very angry because he knows that his time is short. Wait, it sure does sound like he's going to be cast down on earth yet again. Are we repeating something that happened that we call the gap theory that we'll be talking about this week? It sounds like where was he thrown out of? It says that the accuser of the brothers who accuses them day and night before God. Oh, wait, he has access to the throne room to accuse the brethren, you and I, day and night before God. He's now been thrown out of that chamber. Where? He's being thrown out of heaven again. And where's he been thrown down to? Heaven? Nope. Land and sea. He's been thrown back on the earth yet again. And then woe to us, woe to those that live on the earth. For the adversary has come down to you, and he is very angry because he knows that his time is short. When the dragon saw that he had been hurled down to the earth, he went in pursuit of the woman who had given birth to the male child. I skipped like 3 verses here because the dragon was infuriated over the woman and went off to fight the rest of her children. Who are the children? Those who obey God's commands, that would be called Torah, and bear witness to Yeshua. In other translations, the testimony of Jesus, it says, which is what? According to the Revelation, we let this letter translate itself. That's called the spirit of prophecy. So he went to make war, to fight the rest of her children who obey the Torah and keep the testimony of Jesus, which is the spirit of prophecy. Ah, crap. That's a bunch of us in this, watching this show right now. Then the dragon stood on the seashore. Revelation 12, 11 through 13, 17 and 18. This is pre-beast mark. How close are we, do you think, to the dragon, to the adversary being thrown out of heaven again to the earth? And then he's going to come after us?
Not very close, because that's all metaphorical.
Oh, well, damn.
There you go.
Well, then I need somebody to live with me.
Pope Kris did that.
I need somebody to live with me then to tell me what's metaphorical and what isn't. What's literal and what's not. What's allegory and what isn't.
For the record, I'm totally in jest. I'm not being.
Oh, I know
We
that.
know that.
But there's a Muppet out there that's saying, yoo-hoo, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the question, isn't it? We need wisdom and revelation. And
I mean, there are people out there will say, well, that's only if you live in Israel. So you don't have to do that because you don't live in Israel. Well, there's instructions regarding sexual immorality that fall under that category too. So that means because I don't live in Israel, I can be sexually immoral. I remember people asking me in the late 80s, early 90s, hey, Allan, if you go to Amsterdam, you can smoke pot. It's legal. If they make marijuana legal, are you going to smoke pot? And I'm like, and then when I quit smoking pot, remember that, Lenny? Oh my God. Lenny was there. When I did quit smoking pot, people were asking me, are you going to smoke pot again when they make it legal? I'm like, I didn't quit because it was illegal, dumbass. That's like, oh, so I can go to Amsterdam and have sex with other women because it's legal there? See what I'm saying? Isn't that what Israel was told not to do? All this stuff we're telling you not to do is legal in the land of Canaan. Don't do it or you'll die. Same thing. As humans, we have a habit of looking for loopholes on how not to obey God. If I can find a loophole that allows me to eat pork, I'm going to eat pork. If I can find a loophole to be sexually immoral, I'm going to find it. If I can find a loophole to be disobedient and lawless, I am going to find it and do it, and you can't judge me. Are you judging me? Right? How many times do we have? That's like tattooed on the inside eyelids of Christians. Are you judging me? Bible says not to judge. You don't know what the freaking heck what the Bible says, dude. Oh, sorry. That's not the servant of Jesus. That's the humble servant of Jesus that doesn't punch people in this.
Okay, rewind, and do that to the side camera.
I don't have it turned on because we're like in such a little square right here.
Okay.
Why are you looking for ways to be disobedient and lawless? Run to his word and his Messiah and his covenants and his commandments and walk in his obedience. Why would you try and find ways to be disobedient? We'll be right back. Join us tonight through Friday night, 6 p.m. Central over at Rumble, where we are going to have a dialogue about Genesis 6 and modern man and modern Christianity and the times we live in, where we think, where are we going? I don't know. How does this work? How does this apply? And while I'm at it, don't forget to do all your social media stuff, like, subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, blah, 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 blah. All right, Lenny, I know you got some stuff there. Revelation 12.
I was just thinking about, when the Messiah was walking the earth, what they don't show you, it doesn't see in the Gospels. I'd love to see this in a movie. Can you imagine the dialogue that he was having with his apostles? And people say, oh, no, they just, we see him like The Chosen's a great thing, but they see him following him. And wow, it's interesting. How do you think Peter came up with 2 Peter? Talking about the Watchers and talking about everything. Not for a minute. Let me tell you, he probably, if he did do so many things, darn well his disciples were saying, we're starting to understand what the Son of Man's about. All these things, all the warfare behind that. And it shows it clearly from his brother James. It shows it clearly from Peter, who had incredible amounts of influence among the Jewish people. You read 2 Peter, he was well versed in this stuff. And we usually just gloss over that. And a lot of pastors don't even like to touch 2 Peter. They don't know what to do with it. So those are some of the things I was thinking of. He must have had incredible conversations, because we only see one side, because that's what we've been taught to see. And not that it's not there, but what does it say in Revelation 13? He who has wisdom, that'll tell you about what 666 is.
Yeah, it's people don't realize it, but it says that 666 is 3 different things.
Yes.
It's 3 different things. We've been told it's one thing. It's 3 different things. It's like just like the things your pastor didn't tell you. 7 pairs of clean
That's
animals.
right.
Yeah, it's the mark of the beast are 3 different things. Should we? Okay, Kris, will you read it for us? It says it's 3 different things.
What chapter? What?
13.
Revelation 13. Very end.
English Standard.
Sure, that's a safe one. That way, no one can say we're being.
Start verse 11.
Let me see here.
Let's see.
Yeah, no, you can read all that.
Okay.
But we're talking about this mark of the beast.
Okay, let's do 15.
Verse 16.
I'll start 15. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak, and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain.
That's not good.
Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is, the name of the beast, or the number of its name. There's 2 options there, the name of the beast or the number. This calls for wisdom. Yes, Lord, bring us wisdom, Lord. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
So I stand corrected. So it's 2 things. Has the mark, that is the name of the beast, or the number of its name. The name of the beast or the number of its name. Those are the 2 ways that mark is manifested. So then, where do we, seriously, how close do we think we are to Revelation 12? Or is it foolish to even think about that? We have to look at the signs of the time, season of his return. We have to be able to discern the times. We have to be good sons of Issachar.
We can't, I'm not afraid to say it. I've said it before. I think that we're starting the 70th week of Daniel. I really, really do. And I think that starts in 2022, even though that rhymes, but I'm not just the only one that's thinking that. Of course, everybody's getting a lot of different things, but every time I've heard people talking about the coming of the Lord, they have not followed the biblical calendar. Number one, it's always saying, well, I don't see him coming for another 200 years. I guarantee you those people don't understand the biblical calendar that we're on and where we're at. Even Sir Isaac Newton, 300 years ago, David Flynn brought this up. But when I heard that the first time by him, the guy was brilliant. Looking into it, just trying to devour everything he said. Sir Isaac Newton even said 300 years ago, he postulated the times that we're living in right now. And there you go. I've read it 5 times and I'm still having a hard, I'm still trying to get everything I can. I can't understand it all. It's so unbelievable. But anyway, it puts us right around this time. And I have to say that this decade we're in starts the 70th week of Daniel. If I wanted to get particular about it, it's the end of the Shemitah that starts it. So that would scare the heck out of most people, but it shouldn't scare us because we're going to see these things unfold. And what do you think we're doing here? We're preparing a people for the coming of the Lord. How do you prepare them? To teach them how to be obedient and righteous and to go back to the very simple things of the fathers teaching the children.
Yeah.
Restoring the hearts of the fathers to the children, bringing the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, and preparing a people for the coming of the Lord. And guess who did that? It was Elijah. Guess who was a manifestation of it? John the Baptist. And he says that would happen right before his coming.
It's crazy. But that's what we're doing here, isn't it?
Yep. It's exactly what we're doing.
It's crazy.
It's the sign of the mescaline. It's the sign of those that can bring understanding to what's going to be happening. And you think they're ready for it? Well, that's far off. Didn't he say something like, cursed be those who say the Lord delayeth his coming? Let them be Maranatha, anathema. Who said that? Oh, Apostle Paul. Yeah, he said it 2,000 years ago, but here we're at the precipice right now, and people go, no, come on. And so the woke thing is happening. We're cycling again, and we're just getting ready.
And then you have those that are actually saying we're at the tail end of the millennium.
Oh my gosh.
Jesus is here on earth. I'm like, oh, really? Where is he? We don't know. Okay, buddy. I'm serious. There's goofy.
You got to rip a lot of pages out of the scriptures to get to that point.
Wow.
Where do you think the proof text comes for that view?
Here's the proof text. Jesus
Reign?
is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's the proof text for that one.
Proof text for what?
For those that believe we're at the end of the millennium reign.
Oh,
like if they give a verse, chapter, what is it?
They can't.
They can't. They have to deny Daniel.
I mean, they literally
have to deny
can't.
Daniel 10, 11, and 12.
In the same way, Christians can tell you how the gifts of the Spirit are not for today, or that it's okay to eat pork, and they just make stuff up, and they just glean little like 2 or 3 words from a one verse passage, and they create this like you don't have to keep the Torah because God knew you couldn't keep it, so He sent Jesus to keep it for you. So now you don't have to. That's literally a theology out there.
Right. It came from Aquinas, the Catholic theologian. What, 5th century, 4th century? That was all popularized. The whole amillennial thing was popularized by Aquinas. And he tried to put it, again, taking things that were spiritual back into the ability that we can control what was there and putting it in man's hands. It's the statue of Daniel, the very end of the age. the humans. It's everything in our power, and we manipulate. We become God. Yikes!
And so it's probably rooted some in anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
A lot of it is replacement theology. Yeah.
yeah. It's a start.
So you got to remember, the Protestants are Reformed Catholics. They carry all that in their gene pool. Replacement theology, anti-Semitism, anti-Torah, anti-spiritual gifts, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, if you want to learn more about this, Allan and I, did a guest appearance on this teaching on Daniel. You can get it on YouTube, the Branch Forerunner Ministry. It was just covering 7 through 12, but it took us 16 studies, and Allan talked about Gen 6 on that. So you can find it there. Pre-trib rapture. There you go. Oh my gosh. Came from 1850, actually.
Crazy. Well, we'll see you guys tonight.
Right on.
And
Yep.
just in case you missed it.
You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
The views and opinions expressed during our broadcasts are solely those of the broadcast producers, hosts, and/or guests, etc., and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the Travelog Network, its sponsors, or affiliates.